good news, my roll cage tubing has arrived. So the question is, did I make my measurements correctly, or is this all just wrong? Right, I'm doing yet more measuring. I've made a platform here, this lower one, that's 5 inches above the ground. So if I were to sit with my seat between the frame rails, then I could sit on this and measure what height my head comes to. If I were to have 2 of the frame rails running under the seat, which might be nice, it'd give a bit of more strength if you were to hit something, then I've got this second platform, that's the thickness of this tubing. So if I sit on this, and imagine that's where the base of the seat would be, with a helmet on, I then draw on here the height at the top of my helmet. So if I'm sitting bolt upright, that's the height at the top of my helmet. If I hunker down a bit, it's there. Hunker down a bit more, all the way, it's there. My next problem is, when you bend tubing, when you take it out of the bending machine, it always springs back slightly. So that's what we've got here. You see these, they need cutting down, but they're inboard slightly of where they need to weld on. So I've got the Mark 1 tube splayer outer. Basically, if I put one end of the tube under there, one end on the jack, and jack it, it'll just open it up a bit. I've already done it slightly. It does actually work, to my surprise. Right, you're probably thinking I'm just making this up as I go along, and of course I am. So visually we want the top of this to look level. So is it level? I've been wedging it at one end, it's bang on there. Now the thing is my bench level? Because if it is, that would be quite handy. I'll put it there. Of course it might not be, but actually it's pretty level. So what's the point of that? Well, if I measure up the amount I want to cut off and draw a line from the bench, both sides, then it should be fine. I'm just going to think through that a couple of times, but I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. I'm cutting these by hand with a hacksaw because they've got to be right, and I've marked it with tape. And my bandsaw is just it's a bit hard to clamp it in the correct position, and it's perfectly level across the top, and it looks about right. The only other thing I want to do is check where it fits within the body panels, so I'll get my cardboard cut out. Okay, so that's about right. That's roughly what I expected it to look like. This width here is not just to accept my head, it's to accept the width of my shoulders, and that's including wearing maybe some sort of protective biker jacket or something. Right, well I've got this one welded in, the vertical one. I've spent ages getting that right, because if that's wrong, everything else that follows from it will also be wrong. So next problem is this sloping tube, which I've spent an enormous amount of time on. That's been harder to work out dimensionally than anything else. I don't know if you can see there, the lean back angle on it is about 31 degrees from vertical. I've read around this, and the general view seems to be if you're going to have a sloping tube like this, it should be at least 30 degrees, but 45 degrees is too much. Now in my case, there's going to be a hoop here with the steering on it, so there's got to be room to get in and out of the car. So this is going to be 31 degrees, and it was tricky cutting these so that they actually don't have a huge gap around them, and to get them symmetrical, and to get this the right height whilst keeping this at the correct angle. So after a lot of faffing around, you can see down here we've got the correct width so that it mates up with the chassis rails. And then the other thing is this is exactly 30 degrees from vertical. Well, actually it's about 29. Well, there you go. So these are the loops that will go underneath and hold the floor, and you can see from the curvature of this that it will just skim it and miss it. Right, well, I've had a massive welding session. As you can see, we're upside down at the moment. So these will form the floor of the driving compartment. They are 5 inches above the ground here, and I've checked that the bodywork will just miss them, which is why they're located where they are. My failed steering rack mount here, which also forms part of the front of this box shape at the front here, I'm going to have straight tube welded here, which will run back to here, suitably notched, then across to there, and then across to the back. I need to test fit the seat because I need to work out whether I'm going to have the tubes sort of here and here. Am I going to space them out a bit so my backside sort of fits into here and just weld a steel plate on here? I don't know yet, is the answer, until I sort of test it out. This cross brace was always temporary, so that will be cut off. I've got some more tubing coming. Now I've been able to measure it. Basically I'm having a tube cut that's going to be like 90-degree bend straight down there, and then come in there at the top behind your head to form the back part of the bit that encloses your head, basically, and there'll be 2 of those. So that will form the kind of crash roll cage structure, and then there'll be straight links between. Then what do we think about strength at the back? They'll probably put a diagonal in here that'll go from there to about here. I'll need to just fit the radiator and things to check there's room for that. So I kind of triangulate that part to give some bit more stiffness to the rear of the structure. And the same back of the roll cage will probably be a diagonal down to here. You know, you can do more complex things, but at the end of the day, triangles, if you want rigidity for any given weight, triangles are best. The back, I don't know, again, it depends on room. I may put some sort of X shape cross frame here. Again, because we've got a rigid axle, I'm still trying to work out in my mind how rigid you want the back of the frame. Do you actually want it to twist a bit that way as the wheels are going over bumps? Or do you want it rigid? No, you might not want it rigid. The only thing is that twisting force would also be applied to the engine because you've got a solid adapter here. So that would suggest that you do want the rear to be rigid, otherwise you're going to have a huge twisting force on that adapter, which is okay as long as nothing breaks. I don't want things breaking, especially if they're the 80-year-old parts. So I'll have to think more about what I'm going to do at the back end here, but the front end, I've got a plan in my mind. So I'm waiting for some more tube to come. I've got this tube notching device from Eastwood. Basically you attach the top to a pillar drill or a big electric drill. You attach a hole cutter, which is like a saw blade curved round into a circle here. Then you bolt your tube in here, and the whole thing's clamped in a big vise, or it's bolted down to something. And the idea is you can cut notches into your tube at whatever angle you want. Never used one of these before, so that'll be a new thing. Had a bit of trouble ordering the right cutter, so I found one. I think it's coming from Germany actually, but it's still cheaper than coming from the US. So I'm just waiting for that to come, and then I might get a bit of spare tube and just practice cutting a notch. So today I'm going to work out where to put this loop, which is going to be at the front here, and the steering column will mount to it. So I'm going to flip the whole thing back over and just start getting my head around where the steering column is going to go. I'm going to have to shorten the steering column most likely as well. So think about that, and then what spline I've got on the end of it, what sort of steering wheel boss I need to get. Basically that's just sort of early Ford, UK Ford that is. So let's do that. Okay, so you can see what I'm trying to do here. Obviously I've got to have a big enough gap to get in. So you put your right foot there, left foot over, stand on the floor, maybe put your hand on there, and then lower yourself back. Yeah, so steering column next.